Hey guys, wanted to hop in real quick before we start the video. There is going to be a big announcement for Tree Stand Forestry at the end of this video, so stick around to the end and hopefully enjoy today's video. What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about when you should be doing a harvest and when you shouldn't. I get a lot of people reaching out to me and wanting me to take a look at their property or see what they have, or wondering, if what they have is worth harvesting. And I come across a lot of properties that, to be honest, I tell them, look, I don't think it's going to actually benefit you anything doing a harvest here. So let's walk through some of those scenarios and why it may actually be in your best interest to not do a timber harvest on your property. So as you see behind me here, this is back behind my house, and we have a lot of big mature timber, and you can see there's no understory growing underneath this canopy of big mature timber. There's a maple over here, there's some red oaks behind me, there's a big white oak behind me. And what I come across and when I see the most benefit of doing a timber harvest is when somebody has, say, 100 acres and a good majority of it is made up of big mature timber like this. When you have that amount of timber on a property, and percentage-wise, looking at 100 acres, say 70 of it is big mature timber like this, you have to do a harvest. It's time. That timber is ready, and it's not going to hold the deer that it should. But on the flip side, I run into clients all the time that have 70 acres, and I would say 70–80% of that property is made up of a lot of regeneration stuff, a lot of young timber. You might have some pine, some cedar mixed in, and then you have just overall a lot of cover on that property. And then in the back 15 might be some nice decent timber. In that scenario, I honestly wouldn't recommend that person do a timber harvest. And I had a client, that exact scenario, that I told not to do a harvest. Now the reason for that is percentage-wise, from just looking at his property, from how much timber there was and how much, for one, he would be getting out of monetarily, and then also, what would adding 10 acres of cover to the back do? What I found in all the properties that I've worked on is you need cover. You need a good majority of your property being holding cover, but you also need diversity. One monoculture of just regeneration is not that great for hunting. It makes it difficult to find pinch points, steer setups, to, even stand selection can be difficult. You're almost forced to hunt out box blinds, and you end up having a difficult scenario where the deer don't even really want to come out of the cover because they don't have to. There's so much food inside of there. So I like having diversity in my property, and that's ultimately what I'm looking for. Even on a big piece, I did a big property, Southern Ohio. It was 130 acres. It probably had 10 acres of ag, and then the rest, I would say 76 of it, was big open mature timber like this, and then he had a portion that was thicker where a tornado had come through and wiped out a lot of the bigger trees to where there was a lot of regeneration coming up through. On that property, it made a ton of sense. He was struggling with holding deer, and so what we did an aggressive select harvest throughout the whole property, and then we did clear cut pockets throughout the property. And what that creates is now you have a awesome potential of a property between holding power. You have different diversity. You have thick cover, you have browse, you have a selective area to where you still have some of that bigger canopy type stuff. Then you have some of these real thick areas where we did the clear cuts. And it just culminates in a property that has a ton of diversity and has a lot of holding power when you're looking at something like that. So when it comes down to it, you're ultimately looking, at one, do I have volume? And two, is it going to actually make sense percentage-wise on your property to do something? Another scenario that occasionally we'll run into, and this is a bit of a tough one, is to where the timber is kind of at a weird growth or weird point in its growth cycle. The timber is not mature enough yet that anybody's interested in harvesting it and paying you for it, but you also have just a monoculture of no undergrowth and no browse for these deer. It's almost in that like pulpwood type stage. And you know, a lot of the times I see this when you have a lot of cherry, soft maples, a lot of the more undesirables growing there. And it's tough because you're not going to find a logging company willing to come buy that. And so it makes the process a whole lot more difficult. At that point, you're basically left with two options. You know, first option is to go in and do, you know, pockets where you're cutting yourself. There's not ever going to be a huge amount of value in those trees. If they are big enough, yes, you can get companies in, but they're ultimately low quality, not valuable trees in the long term even. And so you can either go in and do pockets where you're cutting yourself, or you can hire a land clearing, or you know, there's guys that'll come out with skid steers, that type of equipment. But ultimately you're gonna have to pay to get something like that done. So, you know, you can look at it then from the investment side. If you're looking to buy a property, it's best to find a property that either has good mature timber or is already at that stage of, you know, you've got a lot of regeneration happening, you have a lot of the fundamental things that you want on your property already in place, rather than have to go in and either hire somebody to do a bunch of this cutting or do it yourself. Because it can be a lot of work. You know, you go in and you clear out an acre, and that sounds like that should be doable. It's a lot of work, because you don't just want these trunks just laying on the ground. You can't even hardly walk through that if you clear cut, you know, an acre and just leave the logs laying there. That's not an ideal situation for bedding for the deer. So keep that in mind when you're looking at actually purchasing properties. I appreciate you guys watching this video. Hopefully you got some value from it. I'm excited to announce that I'm going to begin working with Ben Rising of Whitetail Edge, and we're going to be partnering up and hopefully bringing you a better service. Ben Rising has been in the forestry industry a long time, as well as the hunting industry, and is known for killing giant deer. And so due to lack of time on his end, we're going to be partnering up on hopefully bringing a little bit more of the land consulting side of things. You know, if you're looking at tree stand placement, food plot design, all of these layouts, having Ben working with me is going to be a huge asset on being able to look at these plans and figure out the best way to hunt your specific property. On the back side of that, then also having the expertise to deal with the timber side of things, whether you ultimately need a timber harvest and a timber sale, or if it's just showing you where to do these pocket cuttings, is going to be a huge benefit. So I'm super excited about that. I will continue to release information as we, you know, figure some more things out. But at this time, you can reach out to either me or Ben through whitetailedge.com and just send us an email if it's something you're interested in having us do on your property. See you guys next time.